From the Republic Media Network headquarters, it's time for the debate.
Visuals that you were seeing from outside the White House, well, let me tell you, some of the snow has melted, and you can see those visuals right behind me. That is the White House, and security has obviously been beefed up, so there is a certain area till where we can go, but those are the visuals of the White House right behind me. And on to the left is the Blair House, where Prime Minister Narendra Modi is staying. Now, Prime Minister, he is staying at the Blair House. It's not a state visit, but he's been accorded that very the kind of treatment that he's been accorded definitely speaks highly of the India-U.S. ties. Also, the kind of respect Donald Trump is according to the Indian Prime Minister. Let me just tell my viewers once again, this is right. I'm right outside the White House, and on to my left is the Blair House, where the Prime Minister is staying. Now, very significantly, we are awaiting some Indian Americans here who are going to be hoping to see the Indian Prime Minister and probably be able to give out his message that the Indian Americans here will take pride in the fact that they are contributing to Donald Trump's MAGA, that is Make America Great Again, and they are contributors to that thought, that idea of the American President Donald Trump. Let me just tell my viewers again, those visuals of the White House, and also right across the road is the Blair House, where the Indian Prime Minister is staying. Now, the bilaterals are going to be taking place at the White House. This is where Donald Trump and Narendra Modi are going to be meeting. I've shown you those visuals. I've sent in a report earlier, which my viewers have seen, how the Indian tricolor has been fluttering high on top of the Blair House, indicating that the Indian Premier is here. I'm showing you those visuals again. Now, this entire area has been cordoned off, so we're on the south side of the White House, and let me tell you that there is a lot of anticipation here regarding this big meeting between Donald Trump and Narendra Modi. We know that trade, tariff, defense is going to be on the cards, but there is also a giant leap forward when we speak about the kind of respect and the kind of privilege that has been accorded to the Indian Prime Minister. It is the leap forward. It is the step forward in terms of mutual respect. As I said, that it is not just about trade and tariff. It is also about America putting in and trusting India, and it's vice versa. There is a mutual trust relationship that will also be taken forward by the two state heads, by Donald Trump and Narendra Modi, because the kind of honor that has been accorded to the Indian Prime Minister, he is here within 3 weeks of Donald Trump's inauguration. Usually, this time the president takes to meet old standing allies, as I said earlier when I was speaking to Abhishek, allies like Japan, United Kingdom, or also Israel. But this time it is the Indian Premier who's been invited. So a lot of speculations there that is Donald Trump hinted at reciprocal. He's given the reciprocal. All right. So as I get you this live coverage from outside the White House, the big breaking news that is coming to us, and we're giving it to our viewers. There's ahead of the Modi-Trump, seems to be a power push. India to hold this fall, Trump to be in New Delhi for Quad Leaders Summit. Now, this is the big news that we're giving to our viewers. American President Donald Trump is going to be in New Delhi for the Quad Summit. Now, that is the confirmation that's coming in. The American President is going to be in New Delhi, is going to be in India's capital, Abhishek. What we are hearing, Prime Minister in Washington, D.C. in the month of February, and it's going to be Donald Trump in India in a few months from now.
Well, yes. So this is coming from a background briefing that White House officials took. This was off the record, and I had a connection there. And I can tell you Sucharita, that this is building up really well, momentum building up to that meeting. In fact, the officials in that briefing said that a trade deal between India and the United States is likely in this calendar year. We can break that, in fact, that India-U.S. trade deal to happen in 2025. I would ask Qatar to get that also in the breaking. Apart from that, the officials said that the two leaders are going to discuss among other things, the ongoing Europe war, of course, on trade and tariff. This is taken into this discussion that's going to take place on the trade deal. A lot expected so far as the Trump administration is concerned. That's what the officials said. There is momentum going. They are happy already with some announcements about which you were mentioning that have taken place in the budget, Sucharita. And the big one, of course, that Quad Leaders Summit is to take place in the fall, which is September, October this year. And then obviously President Trump is going to be coming to New Delhi. But back to you, Sucharita, there in Washington, D.C.
And we've got a panel, a fantastic panel on board for this very, very important coverage. Let me go across to Mr. Brahma Chelani. Mr. Chelani, if you can hear me, a very good morning from Washington, D.C. And it's very clear that a lot of eyes are on this very historic meeting between Donald Trump and Narendra Modi. What are your expectations, really? Because a lot of talk about the American president giving out the reciprocal hint. Do you really think that there will be talks, but there will also be a reciprocity, like, as I said, a reciprocal hint from India as well? It's going to be business first, but it's going to be on equal terms. Sir.
The relationship with the U.S. is the most important relationship for India. This relationship is critical to India's economic and military security. When Trump was in office in his first term, that probably was the best period in U.S.-India ties for several reasons. First, the Trump administration gave India the pride of place in its new Indo-Pacific strategy. Trump also revived the long-dormant Quad in 2017, with very first year of his first term. And more importantly, in relation to India's two regional adversaries, China and Pakistan, Trump in his first term undertook fundamental shifts in American policy. In relation to China, he not only abandoned the 45-year American policy that began with Richard Nixon and continued until Barack Obama was in the White House. That policy was to aid China's economic rise. He abandoned that policy, and in its place, he identified China as a rival and a threat. And in relation to Pakistan, he again shifted American policy. The coddling of Pakistan that had happened under successive U.S. presidents came to an end. He cut off all security assistance to Pakistan, saying that Pakistan was not ending its links with terrorist groups. So that was the high period in the U.S.-India relationship. But then came Joe Biden, and under Joe Biden, there were strains that emerged, especially after the Ukraine war. India's neutrality in the Ukraine war was just the beginning of a series of disputes and differences that arose during the Biden presidency. So Modi's visit now, so early on in Trump's second term, is largely an effort to mend ties with the U.S., to restore the momentum in this relationship that we saw in Trump's first term. And given the personal rapport between Trump and Modi, one can expect that this relationship will revive. It'll revive despite Trump's desire to impose tariffs. And in fact, India will be affected by his reciprocal tariffs. And certainly the steel and aluminum tariffs that he has imposed have also hit India.
Right, Mr. Jalani, let me tell my viewers that I'm joined by Saurav Shukla, who's the editor-in-chief of newsmobile.in, and he's also going to be co-anchoring this panel with me right now. We're both live from Washington, D.C. And Saurav, as Mr. Jalani very clearly put it, that the relationship between India and U.S. was at its peak during the Trump administration in his first tenure. Now, do you see that buoyancy returning back to the India-U.S. ties with Trump in his second term and Narendra Modi all set to meet him after 3 weeks into his inauguration?
Absolutely, Sucharita. As Brahma was saying as well, I would say that the Trump era was one of the best times for US-India partnership. And I believe that Trump 2.0 and Narendra Modi 3.0 will be a combination that's going to take this relationship to a new level. I just got out of a call with senior White House officials, and I can tell you, they were telling me that this visit by President Trump is being accorded one of the highest priorities by this administration. The special relationship he has with Prime Minister Modi was articulated on that call, and senior White House officials telling me that this summit meeting today, you will see a culmination of a new paradigm of sorts of a relationship which I would call, Donald Trump's common sense diplomacy, where he sees India as a key ally, whether on Indo-Pacific, on bilateral issues. Also, he will seek India's help in settling, disputes like the Ukraine-Russia war. And even he sees a role for India in Middle East for economic development. So you will see the culmination of a, India-U.S. Middle East corridor, not only growing, but also you will see progress there. And the other factor, which they spoke about is the fact that they are very happy with India's progress, even on the issues of tariffs. So a lot of naysayers who were saying that Donald Trump will hit more tariffs, and obviously that's going to be a negative factor in the relationship. The fact that India has already taken some steps has been noted by President Trump and White House, and you will see when the Prime Minister meets him, in short time from now, you will see a bonhomie of sorts.
The steps had already been taken, and some very important announcements like custom duty cuts in the budget made by Nirmala Sitharaman. Now let me go across to Mr. Parthasarathi. Mr. Parthasarathi, what are you reading out of this big historic meeting between the two world leaders? And do you think that this is also a step forward towards a trusted relationship? Because this relationship has always been about trade, tariffs, and defense. Yes, but is it also about trust now?
Well, all I can say is that the last president, with Biden, we had a lot of difficulty, whether it was in dealing with Bangladesh or whether it was on other disputes where we went off the road between both of us. So the coming of Trump is welcome, because even in his first term, he exercised a certain amount of affection and regard and visited India. Most important, even when he was out of his office, his daughter came here and visited us on an event which was private, but nevertheless, this was just before he got elected, and I think he remembers that when he was out of power, we went out of our way to reach out to his family. And therefore, there is this personal element to his relationship with India. That's point number one, that we've been straight with friends. And as I said, we didn't particularly like the Biden administration for the sort of attitudes they adopted, most importantly on Bangladesh. So I think here you have a person you will cooperate with. And as I say, we have a lot to do with the United States. In fact, we do have a major problem also, which I hope it is sorted out, because we had contracted with the Americans for a supply of over 100 engines vitally needed for our Air Force. And the present administration has gone slow on that. Before it's fully taken up. So our most important thing is the defense deals we sign have to be implemented. And I would certainly look forward to Trump sorting what was the creation of his predecessor out as soon as possible. Otherwise, other than that, the relationship between people is good. The Indian population there is doing very well. There was some objection to how they brought Indians who had illegally gotten into Pakistan back in an aircraft. Yes, that was a mistake, but I don't think it was warranted. You have a president who wants good relations with India, unlike his predecessor, who was looking at relations with others and even with China to a certain extent. So this is going to be a warm relationship. As I said, we have some problems. We are, as I said, we have been buying defense equipment. We are putting more and more investment into defense equipment. And most important, we're paying for it. So therefore, as I see it, defense and trade and investment. And since he also has a good advisor to tell him on investments and is a businessman himself, I think, therefore, that the Trump era can look forward to.
Now, those visuals that are coming in, let me tell my viewers, that's Prime Minister Narendra Modi in a very, very important meeting with the National Security Advisor, Michael Waltz. Those meeting between those shots, those visuals of the Indian delegation meeting the American NSA, Michael Waltz, those visuals right in front of you. And let me tell you that one of the first meetings that the Prime Minister had once he landed in Washington, D.C. was with Tulsi Gabbard, who was the newly confirmed the National Intelligence Chief. And now he's meeting the National Security Advisor, Michael Waltz. Also later in the day, it's going to be Tesla CEO Elon Musk and the Indian origin entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy that the Prime Minister is going to be meeting. And all of these meetings culminating into that big one with Donald Trump. Now, let me go across to Terry Newman, who's joining us live from Israel. Terry, how do you see this meeting between the Prime Minister and Donald Trump? That's going to be later in the day, but he's constantly meeting some of the most important office holders in this second administration of Donald Trump, Tulsi Gabbard being the first one, and now he's meeting the United States NSA, Michael Waltz.
Thank you for the question and good evening. This, at the center of Donald Trump's security policy throughout the Middle East and into Asia is the Indian, Middle Eastern, European economic corridor, which stretches from India into the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Israel, and then connects up into Europe. It's the most important infrastructure project that the Americans have ever led ever in their history, and it is purposely designed to challenge the Chinese BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative. And in fact, this was there was the big meeting about this in the September before the major war broke out in the Middle East, and many people think that the reason for the war breaking out was precisely to stop the IMEC happening. So my assumption is that Prime Minister Modi and President Trump will be discussing how to get the IMEC back up and running again, getting the connections between the ports, the trains, the roads, etc. And obviously to do that, two very important things will need to be done. The first is the Israeli hostages will need to be returned home. And the second is President Trump has started discussing this, is there needs to be a long-term solution to the crisis that is currently in this part of the Middle East. Donald Trump has started by discussing a kind of greater Gaza idea, whereby he will, in effect, extend Gaza into the northern Sinai area, rebuilding it, and then set up some form of U.S. Army base in part of the Gaza Strip to compensate. This, at first sounds a bit out there, a bit crazy, but actually when you look into the details, it's quite similar to what the British did in Cyprus, where they set up an army base that is still there today, an American army base sitting in between Egypt, Israel, who they are the main military allies of, and also they will be the ultimate security guarantors of the Palestinians. Seems to make a lot of sense. It will serve American interests and can ensure that the IMEC is actually fully implemented. And in the process of that, you'll see Saudi-Israeli normalization, and this will lead to a massive boost worth hundreds of billions of dollars. I'd actually probably say trillions of dollars to the people of India, to the people of the Middle East, and into Europe as well. So it's an exciting time.
From what Eric is saying, let me just go across to Mr. Parthasarathi. Mr. Parthasarathi, before I go to Tatiana, she's a senior journalist joining us from Russia. A quick opinion from you on these visuals of Prime Minister meeting the NSA there. Very important talks, and those visuals of Michael Waltz meeting Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Mr. Parthasarathi.
But I think since you're talking about the Russians, may I say one thing? That for the first time in history, President Trump has reached out and become a friend of President Putin. Now, this is extremely important to us because Trump making up with Putin, our relationship with Russia remains strengthened. And really, the Chinese are going to, have to be prepared for this act, because that is going to not just India-U.S., but the China. What has happened is the Russian involvement is now going to lead to a situation where the Chinese will perhaps have to learn to be more reasonable, because relations have been difficult in the recent past on the border. Their deployments on our border have been large. So this is an issue which now we can mercifully take up with both. In any case, the U.S. stands by us on our relations with China.
And let me just go across to Tatiana. She's a senior journalist joining us from Russia, from Moscow. Tatiana, there's a lot of talk about the 90-minute phone call between Donald Trump and the Russian president. Now, Prime Minister Modi here in Washington, D.C. How is Russia viewing this meeting between the two state heads, especially in the background the meeting that Prime Minister Narendra Modi had with President Putin in the month of July last year? Now, all the three global leaders coming together, there are discussions of there being a powerful triad. How do you see this?
Well, look, we've heard from the president himself, from the president's spokesperson that, this conversation that happened yesterday, it was a frank and a very productive one. And I think that gives us a huge idea of, just this shift that is coming on. We need to understand that Donald Trump, he means business. He is a businessman, and he means business in terms of he's been very clear about, undoing kind of creating his legacy as fast as he can, and then capitalizing on this legacy and extending, and making that move and talking to President Putin. We can't underestimate this, the meaning of this in any way possible. There's been it's been rolling over Europe. We've just the General Secretary of NATO has just said that he thinks that Vladimir Putin is a very strong negotiator. But I mean, this is extremely important as a development for Russia-US relationships. But also, I think this sends a very good message in terms of the meeting with Prime Minister Modi. Donald Trump has been very open about saying that he's going to focus on the India-Pacific region. And that means that India is important, and there's no kind of underestimating.
Tatiana, As you're saying, I know that there are all eyes set on this big meeting between Narendra Modi and President Trump. We also have people from the Indian diaspora who are here at the Blair House, hoping to get a glimpse of the Prime Minister, the Indian Prime Minister. He's holding both the Indian flag and the American flag. So what is your name?
My name is Naresh.
All right. Where are you from, Naresh?
I'm from Washington, D.C.
Okay. So, Naresh, how are you viewing this important meeting between the two global leaders here?
I think hopefully we'll get some good news about our immigration part and as well as tariffs. That's what we are all hoping for. And hopefully we'll get some good news in that respect.
Okay, now as you hold both the flags together, what is the feeling that you have? Because it's very important, American Indians staying here. They're also speaking about MAGA, Make America Great Again. They're also saying Bharat Mata Ki Jai. How do these two feelings merge for an American Indian?
India and U.S., I think we are long partners together for the last 18 years together. And so that is the reason we are holding these flags together. Hopefully, it will make our relationship much stronger, and as well as it will be helpful for our students and as well as for the immigrants.
Yeah, and also this now as I was speaking about those visas, the Prime Minister is there's a lot of talk that the Prime Minister will take up this matter because he believes that the skilled workforce also adds to the American economy for sure. So that is surely a topic that will come up on discussion is what we are expecting. We are joined by our guests. How are you looking at it? Because the gentleman here speaks about visas, and I think Indian Americans, a lot of hope is pinned on the fact that the Prime Minister takes up that issue of visa for skilled workers.
Our friend here raised this because this is one of the big concerns that India has had of the huge visa backlog and the green card backlog. Despite the fact that India's skilled immigrants contribute a great deal to the U.S. economy, the Indian economy, they are a bridge between the two countries. They are, in some ways, are being discriminated because of something called a 7% country cap, which prevents Indian professionals who are there in large numbers, are tax-paying residents here. They lose out. So Prime Minister, in his own way, and Donald Trump is somebody who's a maverick leader who can take decisions. For instance, there is a presidential power that he can exercise to recapture a lot of green cards, which have been wasted over the years, which Biden administration failed to do for some reasons. That will really benefit a lot of Indians. If he's able, that the Congress can do, the 7% country cap, that itself. So Prime Minister will sensitize U.S. President Donald Trump, because this is a major concern expressed by Indian Americans, a lot of these Indian professionals, and also the delays in visas coming their way. So those are the things which will be articulated during the talks. And our expectation is that the common sense approach, as the US President Donald Trump has been talking about, he will factor in the role played by the Indian American community. He saw that, in fact, in this election itself, the Indian American community in a large number rallied for President Trump, and they have a lot of relatives who are in these visa queues, the green card queues. Certainly, they expect President Trump to...
Saying that this is a meeting that has all eyes fixed globally. Let me go across to Einar Tangen, who joins us from Beijing. Einar, if you could just give us a sense of how Beijing is looking at this meeting between Prime Minister Modi and Donald Trump. We know that there have been specific announcements regarding China that President Trump has made. So now, how is Beijing? How is Beijing viewing this meeting, please?
Well, I mean, they're looking at it very carefully. Obviously, they want to see a united Asia moving forward. This would be an issue. But, there are certain things. For instance, President Xi was invited to the inauguration, but Modi was not. The treatment of Canada, which is really the U.S.'s closest ally, hasn't been what would be termed as friendly. There's a lot of feeling there in this question of, how he's going to treat others. There's also this white victimization narrative that has been part of this kind of nativist, anti-immigrant part, and how's that going to work out transactionally Trump is always looking for something. So, the question here is, will Modi's relationship with Trump and, the offerings that he's making counter Trump's focus on immigration and tariffs? China overall has understood that, Trump has said many times he wants to divide Russia and China. He doesn't like the idea of the world's largest resource country, Russia, getting together with the world's largest production country, which is China.
Okay, so let me go across to STA Alexander, who's joining us live from Atlanta. Mr. Alexander, we were earlier showing in those visuals of NSA Waltz meeting the Prime Minister, and Waltz has been consistently calling for a robust U.S. military presence in the Indo-Pacific to counter China. So how do you view this meeting between the two, the NSA and the Indian Prime Minister? Given India's increasing tensions with China, the night patrol. Do you think this meeting, very, very importantly, speaks of the India-U.S. strategic reinforcement vis-a-vis China?
See, as a strategic partner of the U.S., India occupies a unique position between the partnership and autonomy, particularly considering India's neutral stance on the global stage and the U.S. calibrated approach to allies and adversaries alike. President Trump's first term U.S.-India relationship were defined by robust defense partnership, cautious trade negotiations, and a shared strategic interest in counterbalancing China in the Indo-Pacific. And under Trump 2.0, this trajectory is likely to continue, and I believe that is going to advance the relationship without massive changes. Given especially the nominations and the key positions like the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and the National Security Advisor, Michael Waltz, yesterday, the DNI, Director of the National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, to name a few, they have demonstrated the pro-India and anti-China inclinations. And under Trump 2.0, will attempt to reposition itself on a geoeconomic issues of trade, tariffs, and India's burden-sharing role in the Indo-Pacific. And India's growing influence in the multilateral forums alongside President Trump's administration, anti-China policy. It's just mostly on the policy issues where the immigration issue stands, and a team that seems bullish on India. I definitely believe that, and I mean that, sets the stage for a layered but yet optimistic future for the bilateral relationship over the next 4 years. That way, this meeting is going to lay foundation for that, and the Trump administration is also, I believe, is going to likely to demand that India take a greater responsibility in the Indo-Pacific in areas like regional security, the humanitarian and the disaster relief undertakings, and the capacity building, the counterterrorism. So these are the Indo-Pacific vision, inheriting a more volatile Gulf region. A substantial part of India's Indo-Pacific vision is dependent on the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. And I believe if both the leaders can negotiate an end to the ongoing conflicts in the region, then the India-U.S. joint vision in the Indo-Pacific could definitely expand in the coming years. And the potential advantage of President Trump's projected positioning is that India might stand to benefit from supply chain deflections from the U.S.-China economic competition, which is going to be a big deal when it comes on the...
Before I go to Saurabh and Brahmachalari, if we could just have a word with some of the Indians who are here, and let me just speak to some of them. And I come across to you, Saurabh, because it's the Indian voice from America that matters. Where are you from?
Yes. I'm in India or here?
No, from here and also India. You could tell us both.
India, America.
Yeah.
I live in Dallas. Correct. I came here to support Modi. It is a reunion of two strong top leaders, right? Modi and Trump. And we didn't want to this opportunity. That's one thing. And there are a lot of anti-India elements gathering here.
All right. So, Saurabh, we are speaking to some of the Indian Americans here in DC. What is important is we were speaking about the Waltz Narendra Modi meeting right now, and how the NSA Waltz has been viewing China as a primary threat. Do you think that there is an expectation to intensify the U.S. stance on China also during this meeting between Narendra Modi and American President?
Absolutely. I think Mike Waltz has been somebody who has been a great, steadfast ally of this partnership between US and India in countering and balancing out China, especially not only in Indo-Pacific, but beyond. And I see this meeting with the Prime Minister clearly, sending out a signal that the US values India's support as a key partner and ally. And you will see in days to come, the US, whether it's the economic, dependency or strategic, terms, India and the US will come closer to actually balance out China in Indo-Pacific and beyond. And I'm also getting a sense, speaking to senior officials here, that the Trump administration is very clear that the chemistry that Prime Minister Modi and President Trump have will drive a large part of this relationship. Even on China, they're very clear. And one of the speakers was saying that the Prime Minister was not invited. I want to correct them. India chose to take the route of a bilateral visit coming early on. In fact, External Affairs Minister Jaishankar, who was Prime Minister's special envoy, was seated in row 1 of that, breaking the protocol. So that is the kind of relationship today India enjoys with the Trump administration. It's not that the Prime Minister got a snub or something. India chose to have a bilateral visit in a full format, which the Prime Minister is undertaking that. And that's also reflective. And I can tell you, in the call that we had with the senior White House official, it was very clear that this is a special visit and a special relationship that President Trump has with Prime Minister Modi, which will drive this partnership in this term for President Trump. And he is looking for a business-to-business relationship. Don't forget, if Donald Trump is a astute businessman, so is Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He comes from the state of Gujarat, which has astute businessmen, and he has a great negotiating skill as well. So I would say that they will negotiate on issues, but it will be a meeting of minds, and it will be good for our bilateral partnership between US and India, and also will be good for the world, because both these leaders now want to play the role of a peacemaker, and I see a great amount of synergy coming their way, and they will also take on hegemons like China, who are trying to violate a rule-based international order, trying to steal, whether it's technology secrets, a lot of trying to, indulge into cyber espionage and things like that. And India and US, you will see, will intensify their intelligence cooperation, whether it's on, also you will see the defense sales coming from India of some of the strategic hardware that wasn't given earlier. So this will be a new, I would say, a paradigm of US-India relationship, which will be etched out following the summit meeting between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump here in Washington, D.C. today. So, Charita.
Visuals that you were seeing from outside the White House, well, let me tell you, some of the snow has melted, and you can see those visuals right behind me. That is the White House, and security has obviously been beefed up, so there is a certain area till where we can go, but those are the visuals of the White House right behind me. And on to the left is the Blair House, where Prime Minister Narendra Modi is staying. Now, Prime Minister, he is staying at the Blair House. It's not a state visit, but he's been accorded that very the kind of treatment that he's been accorded definitely speaks highly of the India-U.S. ties. Also, the kind of respect Donald Trump is according to the Indian Prime Minister. Let me just tell my viewers once again, this is right. I'm right outside the White House, and on to my left is the Blair House, where the Prime Minister is staying. Now, very significantly, we are awaiting some Indian Americans here who are going to be hoping to see the Indian Prime Minister and probably be able to give out his message that the Indian Americans here, we take pride in the fact that they are contributing to Donald Trump's MAGA, that is Make America Great Again, and they are contributors to that thought, that idea of the American President Donald Trump. Let me just tell my viewers again, those visuals of the White House, and also right across the road is the Blair House, where the Indian Prime Minister is staying. Now, the bilaterals are going to be taking place at the White House. This is where Donald Trump and Narendra Modi are going to be meeting. I've shown you those visuals. I've sent in a report earlier, which my viewers have seen, how the Indian tricolor has been fluttering high on top of the Blair House, indicating that the Indian Premier is here. I'm showing you those visuals again. Now, this entire area has been cordoned off, so we're on the south side of the White House, and let me tell you that there is a lot of anticipation here regarding this big meeting between Donald Trump and Narendra Modi. We know that trade, tariff, defense is going to be on the cards, but there is also a giant leap forward when we speak about the kind of respect and the kind of privilege that has been accorded to the Indian Prime Minister. It is the leap forward. It is the step forward in terms of mutual respect. As I said, that it is not just about trade and tariff. It is also about America putting in and trusting India, and it's vice versa. There is a mutual trust relationship that will also be taken forward by the two state heads, by Donald Trump and Narendra Modi, because the kind of honor that has been accorded to the Indian Prime Minister, he is here within 3 weeks of Donald Trump's inauguration. Usually, this time the president takes to meet old standing allies, as I said earlier when I was speaking to Abhishek, allies like Japan, United Kingdom, or also Israel. But this time it is the Indian Premier who's been invited. So a lot of speculations there that is Donald Trump hinted at reciprocal. He's given the reciprocal hint. Is he trying to send out a message before that big meeting? The thought with which Donald Trump has assumed office is very clearly on display, but it's also very clear that he wants a relationship with India. He wants this relationship to be carried forward, and he wants it on mutual respect and trust. And this is the same with the Indians. Now, two biggest negotiators are.
So, my question is to Brahma. Brahma, you were listening to what my co-panelist was saying. Where do you see the China equation coming in this US-India, the new paradigm that they will be building? Where do you see the role of China? How do you think US and India will now balance China? Brahma?
Sort of under Biden, and I think this will be Biden's lasting legacy. Instead of driving a wedge between China and Russia, his foreign policy brought China and Russia closer together. It created an unholy alliance against the U.S. The U.S. won the Cold War, not militarily, but geopolitically, by driving a wedge between China and the Soviet Union, by co-opting China onto its side in the second half of the Cold War, by co-opting China into an informal alliance against the Soviet Union. The US contributed to Soviet imperial overreach and ultimately to the Soviet Union's disintegration and to the triumph of the West in the Cold War. But under Biden, the US created a 2-against-1 competition against itself, bringing China and Russia together. So Trump understands that it's vital to break this kind of unholy alliance, which is one reason why he's sought to mend fences with Russia. Of course, the primary driver is to end the war in Ukraine. If the US can end the war in Ukraine, the US can shift its strategic focus from Europe to the Indo-Pacific region, because that's where the real tensions are. That's where, for example, Taiwan faces a threat from China. If the last thing the US wants is Taiwan becoming the next Ukraine. So this shift in strategic focus from Europe by ending the Ukraine war to the Indo-Pacific will create more strategic leeway for the US, and it'll be able to build a stronger partnership with India. But on the trade side, Saurabh, it's important to note that India is the only Asian economy that trades more with the US than with China. All other Asian economies, their biggest trading partner is China. But the US is the only major economy with which India has
quickly go to Ambassador Parthasarathy. You know, one of the things that Donald Trump clearly spoke about, I remember a question that I asked him when he visited India on terrorism and extremism. He's somebody who is very, very strong on that. And Ambassador Parthasarathy, you have covered Pakistan for a long time. Pakistan continues to be an epicenter of terrorism, and obviously a lot of terror groups threaten US interest as well. Where do you see this new US-India partnership under Donald Trump's presidency actually curbing terrorism from Pakistan and also going heavily on terrorist groups who pose threat to both India and the US interests? Ambassador Parthasarathy?
Well, having known Pakistan long enough, what I have now found is that Pakistan is realizing that it is being cut to size. And the last straw on the camel's back will be with President Trump, who has no great regard for them. Therefore, we are quite comfortable in dealing with him. And another point is that looking beyond, the US Navy and India are cooperating hugely across not just the Indian Ocean, but into the Persian Gulf. Because the main source of oil are the Gulf countries. So what is being built, and Trump will definitely follow up on this, is that the strength of the closeness between defense forces, in practical terms, particularly the Navy, this is going to expand, and you're going to see a large coverage extending from the Straits of Malacca to the Straits of Hormuz, which means from where the countries which have concerns about Chinese are going to be coming together. So, whereas Biden was wishy-washy about the whole China thing, what we like about Trump is he calls a spade. And therefore, as I see it, and I'm speaking on the basis of having served both in Moscow and in Washington, that we are seeing for the first time a US president who recognizes the importance of the Russian relationship with Russia that we've had. Biden was always weeping about that. Now, so we are, I think, with Trump better placed. We have to be careful because, little things can get out of hand. But I'm sure that during this visit of Prime Minister Modi, as long as the personal relationship between them grows, the relationship is safe. And I have every reason to be confident that that will happen.
Okay. Before I go to my, next panelist, I just want to, lay out the ground here for our viewers who are joining us here in this special News Mobile Republic coverage here from Washington, D.C. It's going to be a summit meeting, which will be different, even though it's a official visit in diplomatic terms. The highest priority is being accorded by the Trump administration. Senior White House officials told me a short while back. You will see Eastern time around 4 o'clock here in Washington, D.C. The Prime Minister will have a bilateral meeting with Donald Trump, the U.S. president, followed by a joint presser, and then he's hosting a dinner for the prime minister. Certainly before that, a lot of key US officials have already met the prime minister. There is a sense that this will be kickstarting a new era of the US-India partnership based on equals, based on reciprocity. And India is willing to go that extra mile to make sure that the US concerns are met, and is also expecting from the US and President Trump that India's concerns will be met. And they both want to reach an agreement when they meet today. Coming to you, Tatiana, Ambassador Parthasarathy was mentioning about Russia as well. And there is a new dynamic at one stage. In fact, during the Biden era, Russia was a pariah, but President Trump has been speaking about his common sense diplomacy, as he calls it, where he sees a relationship developing between US and Russia. Where do you see Prime Minister Modi playing a role? Because he was the first leader to tell President Putin that this is not the time of war. And now that President Donald Trump and President Putin, they've spoken, and there is a sense that there is a progress there. Where do you see the role of India and Prime Minister Modi in this entire dimension? Tatiana?
Well, Saurabh, I think that we can only say that Russia was a pariah in the eyes of Washington. We can't call the country a pariah, really, because, yes, in the eye of Joe Biden, maybe, but we know that Joe Biden is not quite well. Now we can say it for sure. He's no longer president. We can be open about it. But we just got the news, that the President Putin's spokesperson has said that President Putin and Donald Trump will meet before the bilateral visits at a third state. Taking into account the timing of this development, well, why not India? And this would be, I think this would have a certain beauty to it. But also, again, Donald Trump is very very open, very outspoken, and he stands basically, I think we can say, against everything that the Democrats have been peddling. He is a realist. He understands that naming somebody a pariah, imposing sanctions, and seeing a state thrive despite those sanctions, seeing the global South, that Russia has been a vital part of, the Russia-India relationship has been a vital part of the development of the global South and its kind of emergence as a huge power, as a huge voice, and demanding to have a proper seat on the table. He is a realist. He sees it just as it happens. He doesn't, we can say that he is not principled enough to kind of stand on this principle, saying, look, we're on principle, we have a world order and we're going to stick to it. No, he says, okay, so this is the new order. We're going to have a conversation. We need to be in tune with the times. And this, I think that this meeting with Prime Minister Modi is going to...
Thank you. We will be taking a short break, and just do stay, on this broadcast. We will be back after this short break.